A 21-year-old bodybuilder who has never performed on stage entered The Incredible Hulk, set in 1978. He was not able to hear, he was afraid, and he was mentored by Bill Bixby. For years it was believed that they hardly collaborated, until Lou Ferrigno just came clean. Off camera, Bixby spent hours instructing him how to move, act, and feel. He shielded Lou's green cosmetics from his hearing aids. He even assisted him during 12-hour shifts, which caused 1/3 of the team to become ill or quit. However, celebrity isn't the true story. It's about suffering, loss, and a connection that permanently altered their lives. Something that would be spoken about for years happened inside San Francisco's Grace Cathedral in 1947, when Bill Bixby was just 13 years old. While wearing his robe, young Bill stealthily pulled out a slingshot and pointed it at the bishop during a choral service. During the service, he struck him right there. This was no innocent mishap. There was a plot behind it. He was permanently barred from the choir. For his family, the little choir stipend had meant the world. After years of financial hardship, his mother, Jane, a senior manager at I. Magnin and Company, was attempting to keep their family afloat. She was severely mortified by the controversy, which also damaged their already shaky reputation. However, the incident also revealed more about Bill. Authorities did not frighten him. When something didn't feel right, he would rather break the rules than keep quiet. He would live the rest of his life in that way. Bill was 18 when he was drafted into the Korean War in 1952. He was aware of the dangers. In that conflict, more than 36,000 Americans had lost their lives. He took a quick action, rather than waiting to be taken by the Army. He joined the Reserve Marine Corps. He was assigned to VMA 141, a unit with a troubled past. Of its 41 officers, 18 had been killed at the Guadalcanal during World War II. Bill's monthly salary as a private first class was a pittance. Although it was less than what he might earn from any normal employment, remaining in the United States allowed him to live and pursue his dreams. Bill was sticking close to home, processing personnel files at Naval Air Station Oakland, while others his age were leaving to fight. His career and life might have been saved by that choice. His early years are the reason this was so important. During the Great Depression, Bill was growing up. Wilfred Bixby, the second his father, only made $18 to $22 a week as a store clerk. Today, that amounts to roughly $350 to $400. His mother makes between $35 and $40 a week at her job at I. Magnin. However, it was still insufficient. In 1942, when Bill was 8 years old, his father enlisted in the Navy and sailed to the South Pacific. Jane was left to raise him by herself. They progressively downsized their residences. Bill frequently went hungry before bed. To survive, they had to rely on religious feeding programs. That's why being expelled hurt more than just his pride, and why the choir money was so important. Bill was just a few credits away from graduating from UC Berkeley in 1956. Despite his lack of money, he was resolute. For as little as $40 to $45 a week, he accepted a job at the Hollywood Roosevelt Hotel. He earned an additional $15 to $20 a day working as a lifeguard at the hotel pool, because that wasn't enough to support him. He resided in a small 8-week room close by, and worked 12 to 14 hours a day. He took acting classes with any extra change, and ate the leftover motel meals. However, the Roosevelt was not chosen at random. It was a wise choice. Stars like Marilyn Monroe and Clark Gable were drawn to that pool. When he was there one day, several advertising executives from Detroit noticed him and offered him a modeling position that paid $200 a week, which was 3 times his earnings from the motel. Everything changed in that instant. He used his remaining $75 to purchase a bus ticket to Detroit in 1959. The boyfriend was a theater play in which he had been offered a part. He was only able to get $25 a week from the Detroit Civic Theater. He barely had any money left over for supper because his rent was $20. During the production, he lost 18 pounds and subsisted on bread and beans. But he gained something considerably more precious than cash from that role. He was seen by talent scouts. They offered him $300 a week when he returned to Los Angeles. That $75 risk became a full-time career. He paid for studies at the Estelle Harmon School of Acting, using the $200 she made from the Detroit concert. An agency discovered him there and signed him. 2 years later, he landed his first real TV position on Dobie Gillis's Many Loves. He then strolled into an interview in 1963 and said, "Hey, I'm Bill Bixby." The producer, Jack Chertok, looked at him and said, "No, you're not. You're Tim O'Hara." That's how he got the lead role on My Favorite Martian, which aired until 1966 and was among the top 10 TV shows. With a rating of 26.3 during the 1963-64 season, it was placed number 10. However, the labor was harsh. This show filmed 5 full days, with up to 75 setups every day, whereas other shows filmed 3 or 4 days a week. They were given the screenplay for the following episode as soon as the previous one ended, and they were not given any time to rehearse. The production cost for each episode was about $57,000. Bill became recognized because of the job, but it also caused him anxiety. Would he ever be free of Tim O'Hara's image? He accepted tiny, often uncredited, film roles in order to make his debut. He co-starred with Shirley Mann and Jack Lemmon as a tattooed sailor in Billy Wilder's Irma Luce. In 1963, the film made $25, $2 million, and because of its narrative, it was prohibited from television for years. Despite playing a little part, he developed relationships with leading directors and gained knowledge of how large studio sets operated. He was cast opposite Elvis Presley as James J. Jameson III in the 1967 film Clambake. However, the set was in disarray. Elvis slipped in his bathroom, injured his head, and put on weight. The filming was postponed. Elvis was likewise having a terrible time creating another ridiculous musical. His group started water fights, pie fights, and firecrackers every day. Bill remained professional even though MGM had to issue warnings to keep the chaos under control. Years later, Elvis honored him by using one of Bill's favorite spoken word songs, "Softly as I Leave You," in his performances. At the box office, the film nevertheless made it to Soca 15. Bill performed with Elvis again in Speedway the following year, in 1968. He played a gambler named Kenny Donford, whose addiction almost ended his friend's racing career. With actual racers like Richard Petty and Cale Yarborough, it was the first major film on NASCAR. Elvis received $850,000 in addition to 50% of the earnings. Bill had a complicated, emotional, and imperfect personality. It was among his best performances in early movies. Bill was sick of merely playing the part at that point. He began directing in 1970, while Eddie's father was courting him. He played Tom Corbett, a widowed father raising his son Eddie, in the 1969-1972 season. Audiences were astounded by the emotional connection he had with young actor Brandon Cruz. The Karate Story, which debuted in January 1972, was one of the 8 episodes he directed overall. For that role, he was nominated for an Emmy in 1971. He was a meticulous, and hands-on director. He pushed everyone to achieve his goals since he knew what he desired. Bill made it happen, even though most leading performers were not permitted to direct at the time. He stunned audiences once more in 1976. In Rich Man, Poor Man, he portrayed Willie Abbott, a man molded by power and greed. Far from his loving fatherly persona, this was a sinister role. On average, 34.9 million people watched each episode of the miniseries. He was nominated for another Emmy for his performance. His portrayal of a morally flawed guy astounded many, but that's what made it so potent. When he starred in The Magician in 1973, it was one of his most unexpected roles. He portrayed a real magician who solved crimes, Anthony Blake. Every magic act he performed on film was authentic, which is what made it unique. No fake photography, no special effects. He received instruction in escape performances, mentalism, and sleight of hand from magician Mark Wilson. The 22-episode series taught viewers about magic done the hard way, and he continued to direct. A Ransom for Yesterday, which aired on February 9th, was one of the Manx episodes he directed in 1975. The ransom was $250,000, or $1.4 million in today's currency. It was one of the most violent shows on television, with an average of 3.2 deaths per episode. Bill's guidance was more concerned with the emotional fallout than the violence. He managed 4 episodes in total, including Courage and Hardball, demonstrating his ability to tackle difficult crime stories while maintaining a personal touch. Bill Bixby made a daring demand when he entered CBS meetings in November 1977. He assured them that the Hulk series would not be a dumb children's program. It would be serious, true drama, he remarked. He didn't want cartoonish humor or vibrant colors. He wished to convey suffering, isolation, and hardship. The producers initially didn't think he was real. They anticipated a Batman from the 1960s. However, Everyone was taken aback when the pilot aired on November 4, 1977. Dark shadows and melancholy piano music gave the impression that it was a horror movie. Dr. David Banner was portrayed by Bixby as a man wallowing in his own remorse. CBS's highest-rated TV film of the year was that pilot. Bixby quickly demonstrated his argument. The entire series, which consisted of 80 episodes, began airing on March 10, 1978, and ended on May 12, 1982. The work behind the scenes was difficult. The Hulk's actor, Lou Ferrigno, had to spend 3 to 4 hours a day doing makeup. He sat for 20 hours straight on the pilot. He still had to perform in full costume for 12 to 14 hours after applying makeup. Even the paint was difficult for him to remove. 2 helpers would wash his back, and they had to erect a special shower in his trailer. They only worked 3 hard days in some weeks. On other occasions, they worked non-stop for 7 days. Skin issues resulted from his green makeup. His face was covered in equipment that felt like gelatin adhered to his flesh. The makeup crew underwent multiple changes. It wasn't simple. Despite all that was happening, Bixby wasn't merely acting. He also began directing episodes. The first, a 2-part narrative he directed in 1981, turned out to be one of the series' most potent pieces. Something that would permanently alter Bixby occurred that same year. He and his 6-year-old son, Christopher, were on a ski vacation at Mammoth Lakes on March 4, 1981. Suddenly, the boy got a throat infection. Christopher waited in the hospital, while the doctor worked to remove a splinter from another patient's finger. It was too late when they attempted to put in a breathing tube. Christopher died after suffering a heart arrest. That loss crushed him. Bixby later stated, "My son suffocated while the doctor was removing a splinter from another doctor's finger." He claimed that for 2 years, he was consumed by anger and was unable to function normally. Actress Brenda Benet, Christopher's mother, killed herself on April 7, 1982, a little more than a year later. She was just 36. She laid down in the bathroom, lighted candles, and used a .38 revolver to shoot herself. The previous year, Bixby and Benet had separated. Friends claimed that ever since their kid passed away, she had been drowning in sorrow. 2 weeks prior, she had also broken up with someone. It was excessive. Within 13 months, Bixby lost both his ex-wife and his child. He poured himself into his work in order to survive. He began directing Mr. from Merlin episodes in late 1981. The Cloning of the Green was one of the first to air on October 14, 1981. Despite his suffering, Bixby directed many of the show's 22 episodes, which concluded in March 1982. Even though he was obviously in pain, he remained friendly and warm, according to others on site. His survival strategy became directing. When he worked on Eddie's father's Courting from 1969 to 1972, Brandon Cruz, the youngster who played Eddie, didn't have a stable upbringing. He was taken under Bixby's wing. They forged a close friendship off-screen. Cruz was referred to by Bixby as his real family. "Thanks to Brandon," he once remarked, "I didn't know I had that part of me until after the show." Cruz became even more significant to Bixby after he lost his son in 1981. Cruz honored their enduring relationship by naming his own child after Bixby years later. Bixby and Lou Ferrigno developed yet another unexpected relationship on The Incredible Hulk. The youngest Mr. Pereire Nation winner in history, Ferrigno had no prior acting experience when he participated at the age of 21. He was patiently educated by Bixby. Long night shots were spent with Bixby carefully teaching Ferrigno how to exhibit emotion. Ferrigno eventually started referring to Bixby as a father figure. Ferrigno claimed that his favorite episodes were those that Bixby directed, even after several decades had passed. Ferraro became a real actor because of that friendship. Bixby made a comeback as David Banner in the 1988 television film, The Incredible Hulk Returns. It wasn't on CBS this time. It debuted something new and was broadcast on NBC Thor from Marvel. Bixby came up with the idea. The network wanted less drama and more action, but he wanted to tie the Hulk to a larger universe. Bixby resisted. He ensured that the film's melancholic piano tunes and somber tone persisted. To become the Hulk again, Ferraro had to put in a lot of training and gain 45 pounds in 3 months. The film debuted on May 22, 1988. It adhered to Bixby's concept while laying the groundwork for upcoming Hulk efforts. His directing abilities continued to develop. In 1977, he was even nominated for a Directors Guild of America award for an episode of the second book of Rich Man, Poor Man. The original author hadn't even published a second book yet, so that was shocking. Bixby had to learn it on the fly. Among the 21 episodes, Chapter 3 was particularly noteworthy and influenced the development of miniseries television. His projects weren't all successful. He oversaw the pilot for Walter, the third MASH spin-off, in 1984. Due to the Democratic National Convention's interruption, it only aired once on July 17, 1984, and it was never broadcast on the West Coast. The narrative was excessively gloomy. Radar O'Reilly became a suicidal police officer after losing his farm and getting divorced while on honeymoon. It was deemed unwatchable by critics. One even stated that they would prefer to see the speech by Walter Mandale. Bixby also worked on a show called Dreams in that same year. It was innovative for its time. It made advantage of music video styles and stereo sound. Jamie Gertz and John Stamos played the lead roles. Kiss Me Red, the pilot, and Suspicions, an unaired episode, were both directed by Bixby. Only from October 3 to October 30, 1984 did the show run. Alone only ran for 5 episodes. But in 1987, one of its songs became a heartwarming hit. The music endured even though the program was no longer there. Bixby directed 8 episodes of the comedy Sledgehammer between 1987 and 1988. It was a parody of Dirty Harry, complete with ridiculous jokes and excessive violence. In one episode, Bixby even made a brief appearance as a prisoner who screamed, "I'm free. I'm free," as the incorrect door opened. It demonstrated Bixby's range and was odd and humorous. Bixby remarried in December 1990, this time to Laura Michaels. Although it didn't last, it felt like a new beginning. He was given a prostate cancer diagnosis in 1991. She left him after a few months into their marriage. In June 1992, their divorce was formalized. The cruelest part was that, now that he had finally opened up, he was dealing with cancer by himself. According to friends, he was at his lowest. His illness was spreading through his bones, and he had no family or marriage. Bill Bixby was diagnosed with prostate cancer in April 1991. Anyone could be stopped in their tracks by such news. Not him, though. His pace remained constant. He continued to turn up for work directing episodes of the popular NBC series Blossom. By 1992, he continued to walk onto the scene, despite his excruciating pain, and the fact that the disease had spread to his liver, bladder, and bones. He directed an episode titled Getting Lucky on November 20, 1992. He checked into UCLA Medical Center the very next day for an experimental Ceramin treatment. He was attempting to control discomfort that never went away by taking tablets and intravenous medications 5 or 6 times a day. He never allowed the staff or actors to witness him grumbling, though. Not only was he working while dying, but he still cared about getting every shot correct, which is why they were astonished. The Death of the Incredible Hulk, a television film, was shown on NBC in February 1990, 2 years prior. In addition to directing the whole movie, Bixby played Dr. David Banner one final time. In the narrative, Banner pretended to be David Bellamy, a mentally handicapped janitor. While hiding out in Portland, Banner ultimately perished in a plane crash while he was searching for a solution. It was too near, too genuine. Banner would resurrect in the sequel, The Revenge of the Incredible Hulk, which they had already scripted behind the scenes. However, they were never able to make it this time, because of Banner's mind and the Hulk's body. Everything came to an end when Bixby's cancer reached its fatal stage. Bixby portrayed a murder suspect in the January 1992 episode of Diagnosis of Murder on CBS. After more than 3 decades of acting, it was his last movie part. He was undergoing severe treatment at the time, but he nevertheless gave one of his strongest performances. Vancouver, where he had shot his previous Hulk feature, served as the location for this one. He was still so sharp that no one could believe it. In the film was Marat Hartley as well. They had previously collaborated. Everyone there was profoundly affected by seeing Bixby endure it all. Bill Bixby passed away at the age of 59 in his Century City residence on November 21, 1993. Cancer had ravaged through his body for 3 years. Even nevertheless, medical professionals reported that he lived almost 2 years longer than they had anticipated. More than a life was lost when he passed away. Fans had hoped for a Hulk sequel, but it was never made. In July 1990, the screenplay for The Revenge of the Incredible Hulk was already completed. But there was no flag without Bixby. Hundreds of people from the industry attended his funeral. He was more than just an actor in their eyes. They recalled a man who always showed up, remained generous, and gave his all each and every day. Bixby never stopped helping people, even when he was in suffering. He gave one-on-one mentoring to crew members and young actors. People claim that before offering counsel, he slithered into your head to comprehend your issues. And he continued to smile while taking numerous painkillers and enduring ongoing treatments. Brandon Cruz, his co-star during Eddie's father's courting, claimed that Bixby never belittled anyone. Even when he was dying, he treated everyone equally. Bixby had also endured hardships from which most people would never fully recover years before. Christopher, his 6-year-old son, passed away unexpectedly while on a ski vacation in 1981. Brenda Bennett, his ex-wife, killed herself the next year. The loss of their kid was too much for her to handle. Bixby, however, continued to work. His getaway was his job. According to those who worked with him, he didn't simply keep going. Instead, he continued to uplift others despite his internal suffering. He had been put through more than most performers would believe, even during the making of The Incredible Hulk. He had to take out his painful hard contact lenses every 15 minutes, for 2 hours of makeup just for the transformation scenes. Every day, Finn, who portrayed the Hulk, spent 3 to 4 hours applying green makeup. Ferrigno spent 20 hours straight on makeup. In the 1977 pilot, the green paint rubbed off on everything, ruining the outfits of the children on stage. However, Bixby never became angry. No matter how difficult the days were, he kept everyone on track. They even have a 4:00 a.m. Lou Ferrigno's breakfast was stolen by a rogue coyote on the day of filming. He was sitting outside his trailer with a huge omelet made with 12 eggs, and the coyote grabbed it in the middle of that icy early morning shot. Bixby remained calm. He changed the timetable, joked about it, and continued. It was incorporated into the folklore. The Hulks were furious because they hadn't had breakfast. Most people are unaware that Ferrigno was personally trained by Bixby. Being hard of hearing made things considerably more difficult for Ferrigno, who had never acted before. Bixby spent hours off camera to help him with placement, language, and even using movement to convey emotions. Bixby ensured that makeup workers never got green paint close to Ferrigno's ears, who wore hearing aids. Ferrigno compared Bixby to a father figure. He even studied acting by watching Bixby's previous performances. Cary Grant once visited the set specifically to meet the Hulk. Ferrigno's picture was ensured by Bixby. He was constantly encouraging others and ensuring that everyone had what they required. However, the Incredible Hulk's filming schedule was a nightmare. They lacked a soundstage of their own. They were always changing places. A third of the crew had left or become ill by the 4th season. Days were 12-14 hours long. Ferrigno occasionally worked till 2 in the morning. Bixby, however, never missed a day, never fell, and never broke. He was able to maintain his composure even 5 days before his death, while directing Blossom. Although they didn't spend much time together on film, Bixby and Ferrigno had a genuine bond. Prior to the transition sequences, Bixby would mimic Banner's feelings so Ferrigno could mimic them verbally. He was performing himself and coaching him at the same time. That's why the Incredible Hulk's death was so poignant. You could sense the anguish from both Banner and Bixby. NBC made more plans after realizing how wonderfully that film performed. Banner would have come back to life with the following one, but cancer put an end to it all. 6 days prior to his death, Bixby helmed his last Blossom episode. Ferrigno claims that Bixby taught him more than simply acting. They dealt with dignity, employment, fame, and life. Additionally, the planned Hulk comeback vanished along with Bixby. It didn't feel right without him.